Continuing with the flexible binding and full leather, today we'll cover the book. I didn't get as far as I'd hoped, but I still expect to finish in 9 parts. One of the things to remember with covering in leather is that it's forgiving. Keep the leather moist and you can take your time and get things right. For instance, I didn't get the book centered on the leather first go, and I just removed the leather and repositioned the book. But once you start, you have to finish. You can't go off and look for something. So the first thing I do is try and get everything together and make sure I'm not missing something. As well as tying up the joints to form the head caps, I'm going to tie up the bands to stop the leather lifting as it dries. With some leathers you can get away with not doing this, but I thought either way I should demonstrate it. There are tying up presses, which are like thin finishing presses with pins in the side, or tying up boards, which is what I'll use. The tying up press is easier to use, but the first times I used one, I crushed or otherwise damaged the leather, both times, and there hasn't been a third. I've since been told a way to stop this happening, but now I don't have access to one. I've made these tying up boards by nailing a couple of pieces of wood together and lining them with felt, but I think you could just use some heavy grey board. I start by wetting out the grain or hair side of the leather. I don't want it soaking in water, just very moist. This is done for a few reasons. Moisture from the paste will strike through to the grain side, and with the leather all being moist, it will reduce the chances of tide lines forming. Most importantly, it slows down the setting of the paste, which gives you plenty of time to cover the book. I'll periodically wipe over the book while covering, especially if I see areas drying out. This also removes any stray paste that gets onto the leather. Getting a bit of paste on leather isn't a problem, it just wipes off with the wet sponge. You'll notice I use a piece of card to hold the leather at the start. This is so my wet fingers don't leave dots which are wetter than the rest of the leather. I then apply the first layer of paste, after which I fold the leather over on itself and leave it for a while to let the paste soak in. While the paste is penetrating the leather, I'll quickly shorten the spacer hooks so that they won't interfere with the turn-ins later. Maybe I should have made them shorter to start with. After the paste is soaked in for a few minutes, I unfold the leather and use a scrap piece of card to scrape off any paste remaining on the surface. This is something I started doing fairly recently after seeing a number of well-known bookbinders do it. The idea is to finish with a thin layer of paste in the best shape possible before covering. I then give the leather another coating of paste. If the leather is still soaking up paste, you might consider doing this a third time, but I'm going to stop here. I position the leather so the side that I've decided will be the back is on the right, and then give the backboard and spine of the book a coating of paste. I position the book on the leather and then give the front board a coating of paste. Then I fold the leather over the book. I want it firmly wrapped around the spine but not stretched around. I check the squares and find that I'm not happy with how even they are, so I simply take the leather off and redo it. I then fold the turn-ins out and stand the book up on its foredge, and using the palms of my hands, I gently draw the leather over the spine of the book. I really don't want to overstretch the leather. I just want the leather to touch the spine between the cords. Then I lay the book flat again and lift the leather over the boards and draw forward to the foredge any slack I created in the leather. I place the book back onto its foredge and use a band stick to start training the leather to stick to the spine. I'll also use a pair of band nippers to mould the leather over the cords, forming the bands. The trick to using the band nippers is to set them to the width of the cords and then roll them over the spine, pushing the leather down around the cords. You don't want to pinch the cords or drag them over the leather. A band stick is just a piece of smooth wood. Mine is about 3/4 of an inch wide and 1/4 inch thick. If you don't have band nippers, an alternative is a band stick with a groove cut in it the width of the cords. Before I do the turn-ins, I need to trim the corners. I push the leather onto the corner to make an impression of the corner in the leather. I roll the corner back, place a scrap piece of thick board under the rolled back corner, and using my paring knife, I trim the corner off at 45 degrees, a bit more than a board's thickness away from the board. I cut the leather at a very low angle to produce a beveled edge to the leather. Before I roll the leather back onto the boards, I refresh the paste since the leather has been lifted a few times by this point. To give my fingers a bit of room to do the head and tail turn-ins, I'll place the book on a thick piece of wood. I should also mention, once the leather was on the book, I keep some foam under it so the leather doesn't get scratched by my rough cutting mats. I'll refresh the paste on the turn-ins and put a bit on the outside at the spine areas. The tricky part is turning in down the spine. Use your bone folder to make sure there aren't any wrinkles in the leather in the spine area. Before I close the book up, I like to add a bit of paste on the turn-ins at the spine. I may have forgotten to do this at the first end, but I definitely do it on the second. I'll finish the turn ends by doing the fore-edges. Again, I refresh the paste and then draw the leather over the edge of the boards. I'm doing standard pleated corners, which is just moulding the wet leather over the corner with any excess leather forming tiny pleats. I have some close-ups of this in other videos, such as a couple of the springback videos. I'll quickly go over the spine with the band stick before I set the joints. Setting the joints is an important step which ensures a well-opening book. I open the book and place a piece of wood in the shoulder of the book and draw the board forward so the edge of the board sits over the shoulder. With softer leather, I might use a backing board and draw the board forward a little bit more. I'll use the band stick to flatten the leather over the spine area of the boards, but I'll be careful not to impress any lines in the leather with the edge of the stick. I'm going to stop opening the book now, so I want to make sure the leather is well attached to the spine by rolling the band stick over it between the bands, and I'll crisp up the definition of the bands with the band nippers. I'll form the head caps now. I'll start by defining the ends of the joints with a piece of thick linen thread. As I pull the thread into the end of the joint, I pull it slightly towards the other end of the book. This avoids leather being drawn over the edges of the book. Then I tie the book up around the joints, moving the knot to one end of the book so it doesn't make an impression in the wet leather. There are different shaped head caps. I'm going to form the sort that rolls over the end bands. I use a pointed bone folder to pull the ears of the head caps out and then use a bone folder to gently tap the leather over the end bands, forming the head cap. I do the other end and then spend ages mucking with them trying to get them to match. I could finish here and leave the leather dry, but if you're worried the leather will lift around the bands or want to define the bands more, you can tie up the bands. As I mentioned at the start, there are different ways of doing this. It is very common to use a press with pins in the side, but I'm going to use hooked boards over the fore-edges and wrap cotton cord around the book. At the beginning I showed a diagram from Johnson that shows the order he suggests for wrapping the bands, and this is what I'll follow. You should practice this a few times before you try it on a wet, newly covered book. Untangling the cord before you start would also help. I removed the thread used to form the head caps before I tie up the bands, or the cord will make an impression of this thread in the leather. The impression of this cord can extend onto the boards, so you want this pattern to be even along the book. But the cord over the first band doesn't cross on one side. You can easily make it do so, and I hold it in place with some sticky tape. I'll leave the leather mostly dry tied up. Then I'll untie the book and let it completely dry. Opening the book for the first time, the leather at the turn-ins on the inside joint is very stiff, and there's a small chance it can tear. A little bit of moisture applied with a cotton swab will soften it and let the book open, and once this piece of leather has been exercised a bit, it will become soft and no longer be in danger of tearing. I'll finish this week having let the leather dry and opened the boards for the first time. Next week I'll trim out the turn-ins, add a couple of draw sheets to flatten the boards, and fill in the inside of the boards. I may do the finishing as a separate video, in which case I'll finish with putting down the end papers. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. As always, I really appreciate you hitting the big thumbs up button. If you're able and want to, you can support the making of more videos like this through Patreon or with a one-off contribution, and the details are in the description below. To find videos I've made on specific topics or other projects, the best place to go to is the Daz Bookbinding Video Guide. It's the index to the channel, and there's a link in the description below. If you want to be notified of my future videos, please hit the subscribe button and select the notification bell. Until next time, cheerio.